The vast emptiness of space held no warning of what was to come. On a quiet Tuesday morning, the skies above every major city on Earth filled with massive ships. They appeared without warning, sleek vessels of unknown origin, hovering silently over humanity's greatest population centers. In the United Nations Emergency Council, world leaders gathered in stunned silence as the main screen displayed the identical scene playing out in dozens of locations worldwide. "They're everywhere," General Miller said, his weathered face pale under the harsh lights. "Moscow, Beijing, Washington, London, all reporting the same. No hostile action yet, but no response to our communications either." President Wilson gripped the edge of the table. "Options. We wait," suggested Ambassador Reed. "Any aggressive move on our part could be catastrophic." 3 hours later, the waiting ended. A transmission cut through every communication channel on Earth simultaneously. The being on the screen appeared vaguely humanoid, tall and slender with pale blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes that reflected light like polished gems. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English. "I am High Counselor Trell of the Galactic Council. Your world has been scheduled for integration. Resistance is unnecessary and will be met with corrective action. We bring order to the chaos of developing worlds. Your compliance will make this process painless." The message repeated in every known human language, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Earth was being colonized. An emergency meeting of world governments convened within the hour. The decision was unanimous. Earth would not surrender without understanding what integration meant. When military units worldwide moved to defensive positions around major cities, the Council observers interpreted this as primitive aggression. They had expected immediate compliance, not questions or shows of force. "High Counselor, the Earth species is mobilizing weapons," reported Observer Lax from the command ship. "Their behavior doesn't match our prediction models." Trell's expression didn't change. "They misunderstand their position. A demonstration will clarify matters." Without warning or ultimatum, a beam of light ascended from the ship hovering above the small military outpost on Midway Island. In seconds, the entire base was reduced to smoking ruins. 500 soldiers, gone in an instant. The Council expected fear, followed by submission. They had performed this ritual on 100 worlds before. The demonstration always worked. They couldn't have been more wrong. Across Earth, the response was immediate and united. Humanity didn't cower, it raged. Military forces that had been eyeing each other suspiciously for decades suddenly found common purpose. Ancient enemies shared intelligence. Rival nations pooled resources. "They think we'll break," General Miller told the Emergency Council. "They don't understand what they've done." In orbit, Observer Lax reported with confusion. "High Counselor, the humans are not behaving according to integration protocols. Instead of subdividing into competing factions seeking our protection, they appear to be unifying." Trell dismissed the concern. "Impossible. No species acts against its own self-interest. Each human group will eventually seek advantage by allying with us against their rivals. It is the pattern of all primitive worlds." When the first Council landing party descended to establish a governance center in what had been Central Park, they expected to be met by local leaders seeking favorable terms. Instead, they found an ambush. The battle was brief but shocking. The Council forces, though technologically superior, were unprepared for the sheer ferocity of the resistance. They retreated in disarray, leaving behind valuable technology and 3 wounded soldiers who were quickly taken into protective custody. As Trell received news of the failed landing, his expression finally changed. For the first time in his 200 years as High Counselor, he felt something unfamiliar: doubt. "This species," he said slowly, "is not like the others. On Earth, humanity prepared for war. The recovered alien technology was already being studied in secured facilities around the globe. The wounded aliens were being treated and questioned. And in underground bunkers, Military leaders from nations that had been enemies just days before now plotted a unified defense. The Galactic Council had made a critical error. They had expected submission. They had received defiance instead. High Counselor Trell paced the command deck, his long fingers tapping a nervous rhythm against his ceremonial armor. The holographic displays around him showed the mobilization of a peacekeeping fleet, 20 warships, each capable of reducing a small continent to ash. This human resistance is merely a temporary setback, Fleet Commander Draz assured him. Once they witness true Council military might, they will understand the futility of their position. Trell nodded, but doubt lingered. The preliminary reports from Observer Lax troubled him deeply. This species showed unusual cohesion in the face of superior force. Their behavioral patterns defied standard models. Proceed with caution, Trell ordered. These humans are unpredictable. On Earth, the newly formed Earth Defense Force worked around the clock. Scientists and engineers from rival nations collaborated in secure facilities, reverse engineering the technology recovered from the first skirmish. Admiral James stood before a wall of screens in the underground command center beneath Geneva. A career military man with 30 years of service, he now found himself leading humanity's first unified space defense force. What do we know about their capabilities? He asked the assembled team. Dr. Rivera, head of the Alien Tech Division, stepped forward. Their weapon systems rely on energy projection we've never seen before, but the underlying principles aren't magical. We've already adapted some of our missile guidance systems based on their tech. The real breakthrough is their shield technology. She displayed a diagram on the main screen. We've managed to create a crude prototype that can deflect their standard weapons, at least briefly. How briefly? Admiral James asked. A few seconds at most, but that might be enough. 3 days later, the Council peacekeeping fleet arrived in Earth orbit. Their formation was perfect, a textbook display of overwhelming force meant to inspire terror and submission. Fleet Commander Draz opened a global channel. People of Earth, your resistance has been noted and is forgiven. However, continued defiance will result in significant loss of life. Surrender your military capabilities and prepare for integration. You have 6 hours to comply. The response came not as a transmission, but as action. Earth's atmosphere suddenly filled with thousands of small objects, decoys mixed with crude but effective missiles. The pattern appeared random to Council sensors, creating confusion as their targeting systems struggled to prioritize threats. What is this? Draz demanded. There is no logical formation to their attack. The Council fleet's perfect formation became a liability as ships maneuvered to address threats coming from seemingly all directions at once. Their standard response protocols, unchanged for centuries, proved inadequate against an enemy that didn't follow expected patterns. When the real Earth attack came, it targeted the communication nodes of 3 key vessels simultaneously. Using the brief window provided by their prototype shields, small, agile Earth fighters delivered specially designed electromagnetic pulse weapons directly to vulnerable points identified from the captured Council technology. Draz watched in disbelief as portions of his fleet lost coordination, ships colliding as their navigation systems failed. Impossible. Their technology is too primitive for this level of warfare. Admiral James directed the battle from the command center, his expression grim but determined. Focus fire on the damaged vessels. Force them to retreat or surrender. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. 7 Council warships were crippled, 3 destroyed outright. The remaining fleet, facing an enemy that refused to follow conventional combat logic, withdrew to safe distance. This cannot be happening, Draz said, staring at the damage reports. They are barely a space-faring species. On Earth, there was no celebration. Admiral James knew they had won only because they had surprised the enemy. They'll be back, he told the Defense Council, and next time, they'll be ready for our tactics. President Wilson nodded. How long do we have? Weeks, maybe less. We need to push our advantage now. while they're still underestimating us. In his private quarters, Trell reviewed the battle recordings with growing concern. The humans had adapted council technology in days, when other species took years. Their tactics showed a kind of creative thinking rarely seen in the galaxy. "Assemble the full council," he ordered. "This is no longer a standard integration. Earth represents something new." The peacekeeping operation was over. War had begun, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy they didn't understand. The laboratory beneath Mount Cheyenne hummed with activity as Dr. Morgan hunched over the alien tissue samples. 3 weeks had passed since the Council's retreat, and every moment had been spent studying the captured aliens and their technology. "Doctor, you've been working for 20 hours straight," her assistant said, placing a cup of coffee beside her microscope. Dr. Morgan barely looked up. "There's something fundamentally different about their neural structure, something I'm missing." The captured council members, 2 technicians and a low-ranking officer, had been treated humanely but kept in isolation. Their physiology was similar enough to humans to survive in Earth's atmosphere, yet different in ways that fascinated Dr. Morgan. Later that day, in the secure briefing room, military leaders and scientists gathered around the large conference table. Admiral James entered, his face showing the strain of too little sleep. "Tell me you have something, Doctor," he said. Dr. Morgan activated the holographic display. "I've been looking at this all wrong. I've been trying to understand their biology through the lens of human evolution." She displayed comparative brain scans. "Their neural pathways don't show the same fight-or-flight responses we have. Their stress hormones work completely differently." "What does that mean in practical terms?" asked General Parker. "It means," Dr. Morgan explained, "that they evolved as pure cooperation specialists, not as predators or even prey animals that needed to fight. Their entire evolutionary history lacks the competitive pressure that shaped humans." She switched to footage of the council prisoners. "Watch how they interact. Even in captivity, they naturally form hierarchies and cooperate without conflict. When faced with a threat, they don't show individual courage or fear. They automatically organize." Admiral James leaned forward. "And this helps us how?" "It explains their military doctrine," Dr. Morgan said. "They've never encountered a species like humans before, one that evolved through predation, competition, and adaptation to rapidly changing threats. Their tactics rely entirely on overwhelming technology and numbers, not strategy or adaptability." Intelligence Officer Davis joined the conversation. "That matches what we've seen in their combat formations. They use the same approaches repeatedly, even after we've demonstrated countermeasures." "They're not stupid," Dr. Morgan cautioned. "They're brilliant in their own way. But their thinking is linear. They solve problems through consensus and incremental improvement, not through the kind of lateral thinking that humans excel at when under pressure." President Wilson, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "So our unpredictability is our advantage." "Exactly," Dr. Morgan nodded. "Humans are walking chaos engines to them. We make intuitive leaps, we take irrational risks, we sacrifice short-term gains for long-term advantage. These concepts are alien to their psychology." The implications spread through the room like wildfire. Military leaders who had been preparing conventional defenses suddenly saw new possibilities. "We need to weaponize unpredictability," Admiral James said, a plan already forming in his mind. For the next week, Earth's defense strategy underwent a radical transformation. Instead of trying to match the Council's technological advantage, they embraced asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale. Meanwhile, aboard the Council command ship, High Counselor Trell faced growing pressure from the other Council members. "The integration of Earth cannot fail," insisted Counselor Mex, his holographic image flickering slightly. "It would destabilize the entire galactic order." "I understand the stakes," Trell replied. "But this species doesn't respond to standard protocols." "Then increase the force," suggested another counselor. "The new fleet will arrive within days. Surely no primitive world can withstand such might. Trell wasn't so certain. We've underestimated them twice already. Their adaptation rate exceeds anything in our records. They are merely clever animals. Counselor Mex dismissed. Clever animals who have stolen our technology. Once properly subdued, they will serve their purpose. As the council debated, Earth prepared. Admiral James stood before a holographic map of the solar system, planning defenses based on Dr. Morgan's insights. They'll expect us to protect Earth at all costs, he told his officers. So we won't. We'll make them chase us across the entire system. Earth was ready to show the galaxy that humans weren't just another species to be integrated. They were the nightmare the Council never saw coming. The massive Council war fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 50 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a city, formed a perfect geometric pattern as they prepared for the final push toward Earth. Fleet Commander Draz stood on the bridge of the flagship, confidence restored by the overwhelming force at his disposal. The humans have had time to prepare, he acknowledged to his officers. But no primitive species can stand against the full might of the Council. Begin the advance. What Draz didn't know was that Earth had no intention of waiting for the invasion to arrive. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Riley and her team of 12 Special Forces operators floated silently in a modified transport ship. Their vessel, hastily adapted with reverse-engineered Council technology, emitted no detectable signature. Status report, Riley whispered, though sound couldn't travel through space. Old habits died hard. All systems nominal, reported Lieutenant Garcia, monitoring their cloaking field. Council patrols are passing within 5 kilometers and showing no signs of detection. Riley nodded, her face half hidden behind the visor of her new combat suit. The mission was simple on paper, but possibly suicidal in execution. Infiltrate the Council relay station hidden in the asteroid belt, access their central communication hub, and plant the package developed by Earth's best hackers. 2 minutes to intercept, Garcia announced. The Council relay station loomed ahead, a sprawling structure built into a large asteroid. Unlike Earth buildings, it had an organic quality, with flowing lines and no sharp angles. Beautiful, Riley thought, in an alien way. Remember, she told her team, minimal engagement. We're ghosts, not warriors today. They approached the station through a maintenance hatch identified from schematics recovered from captured Council data cores. The alien airlock wasn't designed to keep determined intruders out. The Council had never needed such security before. Once inside, they moved through service corridors rarely used by the station's small crew. The alien environment was disorienting. Lighting came from bioluminescent strips along curved walls, and the artificial gravity fluctuated subtly as they moved deeper into the structure. Junction ahead, warned Sergeant Miller, point man for the operation. Life signs detected. Riley signaled the team to halt. Their combat suits, reverse-engineered from Council designs, but modified with human ingenuity, included limited optical camouflage. Not perfect invisibility, but enough to confuse sensors and observers if they remained still. 2 Council technicians passed the junction, so close that Riley could have reached out and touched them. The aliens moved with the same efficient, cooperative precision she'd observed in footage of the captured Council members. No wasted motion, no individual flourishes, just perfect, almost machine-like coordination. When the corridor cleared, the team proceeded to the central communication hub, a vast chamber filled with organic-looking computers. At its center stood a crystalline structure pulsing with light. That's it, Riley said, checking the schematics. The main communication node. All Council ships in this sector synchronized through this hub. Lieutenant Wong, their tech specialist, approached the crystal with reverence. It's beautiful engineering. Their entire network is built on quantum entanglement principles, but controlled through this physical interface. Can you access it? Riley asked. Wong nodded. Their security is focused on data corruption, not unauthorized access. They never considered someone would physically infiltrate a station. For 15 tense minutes, WOM worked at connecting their package, a sophisticated virus designed by Earth's leading computer scientists, to the alien system. The virus wouldn't destroy the network. That would alert the Council immediately. Instead, it would quietly infiltrate every connected system, lying dormant until activated. Upload complete, Wong finally announced. Package is delivered and undetected. Riley allowed herself a small smile. Now we disappear, just like we came. The team extracted without incident, their presence never detected by the Council station's crew. As their ship drifted away, using minimal power to avoid detection, Riley sent a single encrypted burst transmission back to Earth. One word: checkmate. In the war room beneath Geneva, Admiral James received the message and turned to President Wilson. Phase 1 complete. The Council fleet is now compromised. And they have no idea, Wilson said, not as a question. None, James confirmed. Now we prepare for Phase 2, the moment when we show the Galactic Council that humanity doesn't just fight back. We change the rules of the game entirely. The countdown had begun. In 48 hours, every Council ship, station, and facility within 50 light-years would learn a harsh lesson about human ingenuity. The Council war fleet surged toward Earth with perfect precision. 50 ships moved as one organism, their formation maintaining geometric elegance even at near-light speeds. Fleet Commander Draz stood on his command deck, watching holographic projections of Earth's defenses. Pathetic, he observed. Their orbital platforms are minimal. Their fleet is scattered throughout the system in no discernible pattern. Victory will be swift. His second-in-command nodded. The High Council is already preparing the integration protocols. Earth will be subdued within days. On the Council's central world, Trell presided over an emergency session. Representatives from all 37 member species attended, either in person or via hyper-realistic hologram. The chamber's majestic architecture, soaring arches of living crystal that had grown over millennia, reflected the Council's view of itself as eternal and unchanging. The human problem will be resolved shortly, Trell assured the gathered dignitaries. Fleet Commander Draz will begin the final approach to Earth in approximately 3 hours. Councillor Mex rose from his position. This integration has been unnecessarily prolonged. The humans should have been pacified immediately, not allowed to develop countermeasures. Before Trell could respond, the chamber's main communication array activated unexpectedly. The massive display at the center of the room flickered, and then showed the face of a human. "What is this?" Trell demanded, looking to his technicians. "How are they accessing our secure channel?" Representative Taylor, chosen for her calm demeanor and diplomatic experience, gazed out at the assembled council. "Greetings, distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council. I apologize for interrupting your session, but time is short." Trell moved to cut the transmission, but found the controls unresponsive. Throughout the chamber, personal devices and communication arrays flickered with the same human face. "Your communications network has been compromised," Taylor explained matter-of-factly. "Not just here, but across your entire civilization. We now have access to every transmission, every data core, and every secure file in your collective databases." Murmurs of disbelief spread through the chamber. Such a breach was theoretically impossible. "This is a primitive deception," Councillor Mex declared. "A desperate ploy." Taylor smiled slightly. "If that were true, I wouldn't be able to display these." The transmission split into multiple windows, each showing internal council documents, private communications between council members, secret trade agreements, military assessments. For example, Taylor continued, this communication from Councillor Mex to mining corporations, authorizing them to prepare for extraction operations on Earth before integration was even attempted. Or these profit projections showing how certain council members stand to gain financially from Earth's resources. The chamber erupted in chaos. Several mid-tier council species, long suspicious of the dominant members' motives, began shouting accusations. Representative Jor of the Alteri, a species that had joined the Council only 3 centuries ago, stood abruptly. Is this true? Was Earth targeted for its resources rather than for legitimate integration? Taylor let the chaos build for a moment before speaking again. We don't wish to destroy the Council. Humanity values cooperation and peaceful exchange. But we will not be colonized, exploited, or integrated against our will. She paused, letting her words sink in. In 3 hours, we will demonstrate our resolve to your fleet. After that, we hope to begin real negotiations, as equals, not as conqueror and conquered. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in disarray. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia now viewed each other with suspicion. The smaller Council members, already resentful of the dominant race's influence, began forming impromptu alliances. Trull struggled to restore order. This is exactly what the humans want. They seek to divide us. Or perhaps, Representative Jor suggested, they have merely exposed divisions that already existed. In orbit around Earth, Admiral James received confirmation that Taylor's message had been delivered. Begin final preparations, he ordered. The fleet will be here soon, and they'll be angry. Intelligence Officer Davis looked concerned. Do you think they'll call off the attack? James shook his head. No, they're too committed now. But we've accomplished something important today. What's that, sir? We've changed the narrative, James explained. We're no longer primitive savages resisting the inevitable. We're a people fighting against exploitation. And that distinction will matter in what comes next. Throughout the Council space, on dozens of worlds, the once unquestioned authority of the dominant species began to crumble. The humans hadn't just hacked their communications. They had injected doubt into a system built on absolute certainty. The battle for Earth was about to begin, but the war for the galaxy's future was already underway. The red dwarf star Proxima Centauri glowed dimly in the viewport as Fleet Commander Draz redirected his armada. The human colony there, Earth's first interstellar settlement, was barely 2 years old. 5,000 civilians and a small defense force occupied the fledgling base on Proxima, the rocky world circling in the star's habitable zone. A better target than Earth itself, Draz announced to his officers. We will crush their colony and force their surrender. Without a decisive victory, the Council fractures. Draz had abandoned his original plan to attack Earth directly after the humans' infiltration of Council communications. Too many variables, too many unknowns. Here at Proxima, he could control the battlefield. The colony has minimal defenses, his tactical officer reported. Our scans show only 3 small orbital platforms and perhaps a dozen fighter craft. Nothing that can threaten our fleet. Draz nodded in satisfaction. Begin the approach. Standard formation, full weapons readiness. On Proxima, Colony Administrator Pierce received the emergency transmission from Earth. Council fleet incoming. Estimated arrival: 6 hours. Evacuation impossible. Pierce turned to Defense Coordinator Reyes. How bad? 48 warships against our 3 platforms and 11 fighters. Reyes answered grimly. We can't win a direct fight. Pierce activated the colony-wide communication system. Attention all personnel. This is not a drill. Council forces approaching. All civilians to emergency shelters. All defense personnel to battle stations. The calm with which the colonists responded would have surprised the Council observers. There was no panic, no chaos, just determined efficiency as the settlement prepared for the coming storm. What Fleet Commander Draz couldn't know was that Earth had anticipated this move. Admiral James had positioned his own fleet, 27 ships of various sizes, in the shadow of Proxima's large moon, hidden from Council sensors. They're taking the bait, James told his captains via secure quantum link. Remember the plan. Let them commit fully before we engage. The Council fleet arrived with overwhelming force, forming a perfect attack formation above Proxima. The colony's defense platforms opened fire immediately, their impacts harmlessly absorbed by Council shields. Primitive defenses, Draz observed with satisfaction. Begin the bombardment of military targets. The first salvo from the Council ships descended toward the colony's small defense installations. The energy beams cut through the atmosphere with devastating precision and hit nothing but empty ground. What? Draz demanded. Where are their defense emplacements? The answer came moments later as the ground around the colony seemed to ripple and transform. What had appeared to be buildings and defense installations dissolved into holographic mirages. From concealed underground bunkers, the colony's true defenses emerged, technology unlike anything the Council had encountered before. New energy signatures detected, cried the tactical officer. They're not in our database. Before Draz could respond, Earth's hidden fleet burst from behind Proxima B's moon, executing a maneuver that Council tactical doctrine had declared impossible, ships accelerating at forces that should have destroyed them and their crews. Impossible, Draz whispered as the human ships closed at terrifying speed. Their inertial dampeners can't be that advanced. But they were. Using technology reverse-engineered and improved from captured Council ships, Admiral James had created vessels that could maneuver in ways the Council had never imagined. While Council ships relied on elegant, predictable attack patterns, the Earth fleet moved like predators, darting, feinting, striking from unexpected angles. They're behind our lines, Draz's second-in-command shouted as 3 Earth vessels somehow slipped through the perfect Council formation. The battle descended into chaos, at least from the Council perspective. For Admiral James, it was proceeding exactly as planned. Council ships, designed for coordinated group attacks, found themselves isolated and surrounded. Their communication network, compromised days earlier, began to fail at critical moments. From the colony below, specialized pulse weapons, developed by Dr. Morgan's team, targeted the Council ship's propulsion systems. These weren't designed to destroy but to disable, exploiting weaknesses identified in the Council's technology. Within 40 minutes, 17 Council ships had been disabled or destroyed. The rest found themselves surrounded, cut off from each other, fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Fleet Commander Draz stared in disbelief at his tactical display. The perfect formation had dissolved into scattered individual ships fighting for survival. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, a fleet faced not just defeat but annihilation. All ships, he transmitted, his voice shaking with an emotion no Council member had felt in generations. Fear, disengage and retreat. Repeat, disengage and retreat. As the remaining Council vessels fled the Proxima system, Admiral James ordered his fleet to hold position rather than pursue. Send the recording of this battle to every Council world, he instructed his communications officer. Let them see what happened here today. On Proxima, colonists emerged from their shelters to see the remnants of the Council fleet disappearing into the darkness of space. Above them, Earth ships moved into protective orbits, not the sleek, elegant vessels of the Council, but functional, almost predatory craft that reflected their creators' evolutionary history. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would not be conquered, not today or any day. The species that the Council had dismissed as primitive had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never looked so different. Where once only the 37 official member species had seats, now the circular hall contained hastily added sections for new attendees. At the center of these additions stood the Earth delegation. High Counselor Trell watched as Representative Taylor led the human team into the chamber. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by Council members, the humans wore simple blue uniforms with small Earth insignia. Their informal appearance contrasted sharply with the millennia of tradition surrounding them. This assembly will come to order, Trell announced, his voice carrying less authority than it had just weeks before. We gather to address the formal petition of Earth to be recognized as an independent galactic power. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such recognition had never been granted without centuries of supervision and integration. Yet after the Battle of Proxima, footage of which had spread to every corner of Council space, no one could deny humanity's claim to power. Before we begin, Counselor Mex interrupted. I must protest this irregular proceeding. The humans have violated Council law, hacked our secure networks, and engaged in unprovoked aggression. Taylor stepped forward, her expression calm but determined. Unprovoked. Your fleet destroyed our outposts without warning. You attempted to subjugate our world without consent. You targeted our colony with overwhelming force. She paused, letting her words settle. As for your networks, they remain intact. We simply exposed information that certain council members preferred to keep hidden. Representative Jor of the Alteri rose from his seat. The Alteri support Earth's petition. The recent events have exposed troubling aspects of council governance that must be addressed. 6 other mid-tier council races quickly voiced their agreement, followed by nearly all the smaller member species. The power balance that had existed for millennia was crumbling before Trell's eyes. What exactly does Earth seek? Trell asked, trying to maintain control of the proceedings. Admiral James, now part of the diplomatic team, stepped forward. Earth does not seek to destroy the Council, but to transform it. We propose a new alliance structure, one based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. He activated a holographic display showing a new organizational model for galactic cooperation. Unlike the current system, where founding species controlled most decisions, this structure distributed power more evenly. Impossible, Mex declared. This would undermine thousands of years of stable governance. The governance was only stable for those at the top, Taylor countered. We've spoken with many of your member species. Their experiences differ significantly from the official narrative. As if on cue, representatives from 12 council worlds stood simultaneously. One by one, they described grievances long suppressed, resources unfairly allocated, technologies withheld, military protection provided conditionally. Trill watched helplessly as the carefully maintained illusion of council unity dissolved completely. What if we refuse these terms? He asked finally. Admiral James answered simply. Then each world will make its own choice. Already, 17 of your member species have approached Earth about direct alliances outside Council structure. The implications were clear. The Council could adapt or it could fragment. There would be no return to the old order. After 3 days of tense negotiations, a new galactic charter was drafted. The Council remained, but transformed. Power was distributed more evenly. Resource rights were protected for all worlds. Military authority was shared rather than centralized. As the final vote approached, Taylor addressed the chamber once more. Today marks not an ending but a beginning. Humanity doesn't seek dominance. We've seen the flaws in that model. We seek partnership. Different species with different strengths, working together while respecting each other's independence. The vote was not unanimous, but the outcome was never in doubt. Earth was recognized not as a subject world to be integrated, but as a founding member of the new Galactic Alliance. Outside the chamber, Admiral James stood with Dr. Morgan, watching ships from dozens of worlds filling the skies of the Council homeworld. Did you ever imagine this outcome when they first appeared over Earth? Morgan asked. James shook his head. I was just hoping we'd survive. This. He gestured at the diverse ships above, many now adopting design elements inspired by Earth vessels. This is something more. They underestimated us, Morgan said. They thought our competitive nature, our adaptability, our unpredictability were weaknesses. Instead, those traits may have saved not just us, but countless other worlds, James replied. As the Earth delegation prepared to return home, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Council rule for centuries now looked to humanity not with fear, but with hope. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had risen to become architects of a new galactic order. And in the vast darkness between the stars, word spread quickly. The humans of Earth were not to be underestimated. They had accomplished in months what other species couldn't imagine in centuries. They had transformed from an isolated planetary civilization to a galactic power. They had changed everything.